When we start talking about scaling a law firm, going from feeding a lawyer or two to having multiple lawyers and having a team of people servicing your clients so you can truly get to freedom as a law firm owner, that requires not just warm traffic, not just hot leads that come from referrals. Those are always great. But it also requires you to be able to take a person who knows nothing about you, who might not even be ready to buy at the time that they encounter information about your law firm, but get that person to yes. And how do we do that? We do that through having a real valuable sales conversation. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, where on today we are kicking off a 4-part series all about non-attorney salespeople. So I decided that I was going to do this particular topic because I know that a lot of lawyers have been moving in the direction in their law firms of adding a non-attorney salesperson. This is not a new concept. It's been around for years, but I know a lot of us grapple with how to employ this type of professional in our law firms, how to do it ethically, what some of the considerations are, how we compensate, how we hire and train, and what are some of the practical realities of having this role installed in a law firm, especially one that is dedicated to growth. So I figured that rather than kind of answer a lot of one-off questions, we've had a lot of these questions pop up in the Law Firm Mentor community. Shout out to my sales manager, Tony, who has been fielding a lot of these questions as more and more lawyers are moving in this direction. And so if you're interested in hearing ongoing support around this topic and getting a lot of particularized feedback on this, then by all means, show up to some of our On the Mic series that we have with our sales team here at LFM, both our sales manager, Tony, as well as one of our lead sales professionals, Kyle. So they field these questions on an ongoing basis. We also cover them in the Law Firm Mentor community at the Essentials Plus. So if you're interested in that, you can check us out at lawfirmmentor.net, get some real information about our Essentials Plus membership where you can actually get ongoing support around this. But I thought I would cover at the high level some of those topics that come up time and time again. We hear them a lot in our Facebook group community. We also get them a lot when people are DMing us on social media. And then, of course, when people are listening to the podcast, when you guys are giving us shout outs, reviews, all of that, and I ask you what types of topics are you interested in hearing about, this is one that comes up over and over again. So if you are watching us here on YouTube, then shout out to you for being a part of our YouTube community. It is growing, getting more likes and shares, of course, always helps us with that. So we do ask that if you're enjoying the content here on YouTube, then by all means, please subscribe to the channel, like and share the episode, and leave us a review. Let us know what is working for you, what you like about what we're doing, so we do more of that for you here on our YouTube streets. And then, of course, if you are checking us out on any of the many podcast platforms where we are, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, all the places, then please do leave us a review there because it helps us to get more recommendations on those platforms to people who are in the B2B space, who are checking out how to grow their law firm and curious about how we can help you to do that. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about this series, what it's going to be, what it's not going to be. And then we're going to dive into part 1 of 4, where we're going to actually talk about hiring your non-attorney salesperson. So I thought again about doing this series, and I thought about it for a while, but kind of veered away from it from a series perspective because a lot of the content goes into areas that I think are challenging to cover in the format that we're covering, right? So podcasts, the episodes range anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes. So for that length of time, there's a lot that we can cover, but there's a lot that we can't cover. So just a little promo to let you know where you can get more in-depth information with tools and strategies and templates, step-by-step guides, things like that. We're going to be covering that at our upcoming retreat. So here at Law Firm Mentor, you know that we have a couple of retreats a year that are in person. We just had our virtual retreat. That was all about systems. So shout out to our wonderful LFM team that put on an amazing virtual event over 2 full days. But the retreat that we have in person that's coming up in September 19th through the 21st is actually Lead Flow to Cash Flow, the Law Firm Owner Sales and Marketing Summit. So Law Firm Mentor Sales and Marketing Summit, again, Lead Flow to Cash Flow is that topic. that retreat that's coming up. And we're going to help you to turn your clicks into clients and your conversations into contracts. Okay. So how do we do that, right? Sales, of course, is what fuels any business. And being able to take somebody from just getting awareness of your law firm into your pipeline, where you can actually get them into conversation and convert them into a client, is something that a lot of law firms struggle with unless the person is personally referred, right? So a lot of folks in law will talk about the way we grow a law firm is by getting more referrals, right? Getting more people to recommend our law firm. And those are going to be your hottest leads. Those are the folks that are easiest, not always easy, but easiest to convince in that theoretical sense, right? We don't actually convince people. That's a whole other topic. But cultivating a relationship with somebody where they get to yes, a lot easier if they were personally referred to you. But the scale, right? When we start talking about scaling a law firm, going from feeding a lawyer or two to having multiple lawyers and having a team of people servicing your clients so you can truly get to freedom as a law firm owner, that requires not just warm traffic, not just hot leads that come from referrals. Those are always great, but it also requires you to be able to take a person who knows nothing about you, who might not even be ready to buy at the time that they encounter information about your law firm, but get that person to yes. And how do we do that? We do that through having a real valuable sales conversation. Of course, we have to have the right marketing pipeline, right? That's a different topic for a different day. We are definitely going to be talking about marketing, and we always talk about marketing. That's one of the key areas of growth that you need to be able to get folks to sell to. But you have to be able to convert those people once they get into your ecosphere. And how do we do that? Through sales. So when we talk about who to have in the role of sales, I think a lot of lawyers believe that they are selling in their law firm because they are the consulting attorney. But the reality is that consultation in a law firm context is not the same as having a sales conversation, right? We have said this time and time again. Having a sales conversation is much more about helping the person to reach a buying decision. A legal consultation is much more about giving out information to help someone to understand the legal strategy that would be employed, what is the best course of action for their legal problem. And while there is some overlap in those two, absolutely, they are not the same. And the fact that you happen to be meeting with somebody who says, I need to hire a lawyer, and you want to have that person hire you, and you give out a bunch of legal data to help them see how bright and shiny you are, or right, how charismatic you are, how dynamic a lawyer, how amazing your resume. That is not what a sales conversation is about. A sales conversation is all about helping the prospect to reach a buying decision based on how they engage with you and the questions that you're going to pose to them that will help them down the process, through the process of starting with awareness of who you are, awareness of their problem, and really thinking critically about how they should solve their problem. So when you think about that, oftentimes a lawyer is the worst person to do that because lawyers are trained to give out information. We ask questions in the context of cross-examining someone, but we don't ask questions as the primary way that we help a person make a buying decision. We give out information, right? We say, here's what your legal problem is. Here are the statutes that govern it. Here's what the case law tells us about how to interpret those statutes. And here's what I would recommend based on the information that you're giving me. That's how we consult as lawyers, right? We think about that all the time. Even when you look on the social media streets, right? If you're engaging with hot topics in the law, right? One of the hottest topics in the law right now is the recent conviction of Sean Puff Daddy Diddy Love Combs. There's a whole lot of names he has, right? But Puff Daddy is probably the one that most people know of, right? Diddy. Right. And so the trial that recently wrapped up on the topics of racketeering and sex trafficking and prostitution, and of course, engaging in those acts as a part of an alleged criminal enterprise through he was prosecuted for RICO. He was actually found not guilty of the RICO charge. But he was found guilty on other charges, right? That's been in the public zeitgeist for a minute. And when lawyers are talking about that, lawyers are giving out a lot of information and they are giving their opinions about that. That's what people expect when they think they're going to have a consultation with a lawyer. But when they are having a sales conversation with a lawyer or even a non-lawyer, that conversation shifts to being about them in a way that is fundamentally different than sitting down and getting name, rank, and serial number about the law with a lawyer. And so when we think about that, when we engage with that, we have to think, do I want to have a lawyer doing this or do I want to have a non-attorney? And for reasons that we've covered in previous episodes, it is better to have a non-lawyer in the role of sales. But you have to do it in a certain way, which means you have to source the right person and have that person engage in that process in your law firm in a way that's both ethical and professional, but also highly persuasive. And while sales is sales, no matter where you are, there are some nuances to selling legal services that we've talked about before that we're going to touch upon as we talk about non-lawyers in this series. But today's focus, our first topic, is going to be finding the right person to actually do the sales process, to engage in the sales process on behalf of your law firm. And so when we think about hiring a non-attorney, there are some key strategies that I want to cover with you guys. And the first one is that you have to write the right ad, okay? To get the right person, right? To go fishing for the right person for any role, your ad is going to perk up, is going to get the attention of the people who are best suited to do the role, right? You are basically doing a sort of matchmaking. You're saying, here's what we have to offer. Who is best suited to match with what we have to offer? And that is not an easy feat, but it is particularly nuanced when you're talking about selling in a law firm. Because what most salespeople are used to as an ideal sales role is typically some form of base salary, right? So they can exist until they start the process of hitting the ground running. And then ultimately having enough opportunity from making the sale that in the pursuit of selling, they can increase their income substantially over their base. And that is normally a hybrid model of base plus commissions. Well, we know that we can't offer commissions in most jurisdictions when you are offering a piece of a sale, i.e. a piece of client revenue, to a salesperson, because that would be unauthorized fee sharing. Okay. And we're going to talk about why that's not permitted and how to compensate in a whole separate podcast episode. But today we have to start with writing the ad, right? So if we're writing the ad for this person, what we have to first make sure we do is we want to differentiate between intake and sales, right? Intake is the process of getting a person on the phone and selling the consultation. The sales conversation is where the person will actually get them over the finish line. And you need to think through, is this going to be one person? Am I going to have one professional who, as soon as a person starts engaging, from the point of engaging, oftentimes that can happen online, but many times it's when a person calls your law firm. Is that intake process going to lead right into a sales conversation, or are we going to schedule them? And there are different schools of thought. Some people say as soon as you have a live body, the first thing you need to do is urgently get them over the finish line, right? The other school of thought is you need to schedule them out a while so you can nurture them through the pipeline of getting them through the door to getting them over the finish line. And my approach is a little bit in between those two. I don't think that in most scenarios you want to start selling a person the legal service on the phone, because I think that requires, and your best opportunity is to actually engage with them in a way that's more meaningfully conducted either on Zoom or in person, because they can see, and there's a process of actually reading emotion that is a part of the sales process that gets the best opportunity, the best outcome in the greatest number of scenarios, right? So you're going to get your best outcome when you're actually having a deeper conversation. But if you schedule them a week out, 2 weeks out, and you allow that tension to build, oftentimes while you think you're nurturing them, they are giving their attention elsewhere because they're so urgent to solve the problem that they want to do it as soon as possible. So best case scenario is really that you have an intake professional who is scheduling that person for a conversation as soon as possible, 24 to 48 hours, ideal, but certainly within the week. And then you have another conversation, a deeper conversation with that person in a sales conversation. But when you're writing the ad, you want to differentiate. Are they going to be handling intake? Are they going to have leads assigned for them? And if they're going to have leads assigned for them because someone else is handling intake, you want to know that they want to know that that system is dialed in, right? That they have the greatest opportunity, right? They're not going to just be sitting waiting for some mediocre person on the phone to get around to getting them an opportunity. Their opportunity has to be handed to them through intake. They want to know that intake is really dialed in, right? The other thing you want to make sure that you talk about is what is sales in a law firm, right? And that means in the context of your particular firm, what is going to be sale? What is going to be sold, and what process are they going to be responsible for? Are they just the person who closes, right? A body is handed over to them. They have to have a conversation and get to yes. Are they going to be responsible for the entire pipeline? Meaning once people get into the CRM, they're going to be nurturing. They're going to get them on the phone. They're going to get them sold, and they're going to get them closed. And then they're going to follow up with people that they don't close. Are they going to be responsible for cross-selling, right? In other words, are they just going to sell service number one, or are they going to be responsible once a lawyer is servicing that particular person who's been sold, that client now? Are they going to be responsible to get back engaged with that person to sell them future services, or is the law firm going to be responsible for that? The lawyer who's handling the case, are they going to be recommending the next layer up? Is the salesperson going to be incentivized to cross-sell? Meaning, is cross-selling just a part of, like, once you get a body in front of you, your job, whatever, we're going to talk about compensation in the next episode, but whatever that job is it to get that person that one time, or is it to keep that person engaged with the firm for the lifetime value to increase? Meaning, once a person becomes a client, you could sell them once, or you could sell them a multitude of times, or you could sell them to a tributary of other services that your firm may offer. What's that going to look like, right? So you need to talk about that globally in the ad, at least enough to give the person who's applying an idea of, are they a race to the finish line type of person, like sell them once, sell them good and I'm done? Or are they somebody who is a more relationship oriented person? I'm selling over and over again, and I'm selling holistically based on having created a relationship with this person. So the ad is really going to be key to that. And you have to really think through what is going to be the totality of the role before you write the ad. Okay. Number 2 is you really want to make sure when you're hiring a non-attorney salesperson in particular, that you are hiring for EQ and listening skills much more so than any information that they have about the law. Now, it is impossible in today's day and age for a person who is reasonably intelligent and a grown-up to not have some information about the law, right? It could be wrong information, but they got some information, right? They watch Law and Order. They hear about the legal issues on the news. There's a whole bunch of podcasts that cover true crime, and they talk about prosecutions and defense, right? So a lot of people that are not even in the world of criminal defense, who are in the world of civil law, people will think they understand how the legal system works because they've heard about prosecutions and defense that are, different burdens of proof and a whole different process than in the civil world, right? But nevertheless, they think they know these things. So you have to come in with an understanding that somebody might be able to talk to you a lot about the law, right? Whether your area of law is one that they are very familiar with or not, they understand some legal process, so they think they know the law. You don't want to be looking for people that are great on the law, right? Many times I'll ask lawyers, what do you think makes a great non-attorney salesperson? They would say, well, ideally, I have a real estate firm. I would love to have somebody who is very familiar with, how real estate transactions work, how commercial real estate differs from residential real estate, and how we service companies who hire us and get into contracts for the acquisition of real estate, and like what that process looks like that's different than a one-off home buyer real estate transaction. And I say to them, that's very interesting, but that's completely irrelevant to what you're hiring for. I mean, yeah, best case scenario, there could be some level of knowledge, but if you get somebody that is too aware of your area of law, then you have a greater area of risk in hiring this person that they're going to start giving out legal advice, right? And one of the things that you have to be very mindful of is making sure that your non-attorney does not give out legal advice. We're going to talk about that in the episode that we're going to cover when we talk about training your non-attorney salesperson. But it is important that you be mindful that if you start looking for people who have that knowledge and they are prideful about the fact that they have a lot of knowledge in this area, that actually could be a bad thing for you. You also want to think about the fact that you want this person to be really oriented toward listening and emotional intelligence, right? Because while sales requires that in general, in law, you have an other element, right? The other element is what I'll refer to as the bedside manner of lawyers, right? When you are the lawyer who is delivering the service to a person, this is the reason why most lawyers, when they first hear about a non-attorney selling for them, they're like, that doesn't make any sense. The lawyer has to be the one who meets the person because they have to screen out the case and the client needs to feel the energy of the lawyer that they're going to meet with. And that is definitely not wrong, but it is somewhat ill-conceived, right? There are a whole lot of times where you don't meet the professional who's going to deliver your service, right? You haven't met the doctor yet before, you go in sick and say, I need to see a doctor. Your problem is not one of significance to the person. It's significant to the industry. So you need someone who is good in the industry to service you, not this particular person. But we have been trained as a society to hire lawyers by meeting the lawyer and seeing how we feel. Right. So what you have to do as a non-attorney, the non-attorney is going to have to overcome that, which means the non-attorney in particular is going to have all of those bedside manner skills that a client will perceive that they will need to understand about the person that they hire. And if they're not hiring John the lawyer, they're hiring John the lawyer through John's non-attorney, Susie. Then Susie's ability to communicate and to engage with the person and to give them a feeling that they will be heard, that they will be respected, that they will be informed, that they will have great judgment on their side, that they will have great reputation on their side. That has to come through another person, which means that person has to be that much better at it than even the lawyer. In fact, salespeople are attuned to this. One of the things that they learn when they are trained in sales is that they have to not just listen, but they have to be able to connote that they're listening, right? Mirroring back what a person says, leaning in at the times that a person is changing their emotional stance, right? We talk about this in our Getting to Yes course that when we train lawyers on sales, right? It applies no matter we're training a lawyer or we're training a non-attorney. The content is that you must be able to emotionally connect with the person. And that is something that you have to really be mindful of when you are hiring for this role. All right. Third thing we want to talk about when we're talking about hiring a non-attorney is that you want to use a multi-step screening process for this role the same way you do when you are screening for lawyers. And in particular, you want to make sure that you have an assessment of this person. Now, when we talk about assessments, we talked about hiring assessments in many prior episodes. It's one of the things I think is a greatly underutilized tool in the world of hiring attorneys. But it is particularly valuable to have it when you're hiring a salesperson because some of that under the hood stuff becomes much more significant, not just in can the person do the job, but how steadily will they be able to do the job, right? One of the things you have to think about is salespeople. The mark of a good salesperson is somebody who's on the hunt, right? Somebody who is in pursuit. Oftentimes, the greatest litigators are best able to be trained into sales, not because transactional attorneys can't be exceptional at it, but because there is a certain energetic urgency and pursuit that one has when they are in high stakes litigation, right? You're not just pursuing the win, but you're pursuing the urgency. There's a certain pulse that you have that can be picked up on. And that's the reason why if you go to a lot of larger law firms, larger like 50 plus attorneys, and they're divided by departments, the litigators are kept away from the other folks, right? We protect our team from our litigators, right? It's just the same way as in sales departments, right? You go to large scale companies that have a sales floor. Oftentimes the salespeople are on their own separate floor. They have their own separate elevator, right? It's like, okay, we don't interact with those people. Those people are scary. And it's because those people have some of this, right? You want that when you are in a courtroom having to respond on your feet. You want that when you have somebody who's having to pivot and manipulate and maneuver and negotiate the interactions of humans so that they can connect with a human to get what they want from a human while being respectful and appreciative of the human in a way that shows the person the level of respect that you're going to show them when you are servicing them as their lawyer, when they are your client, right? So that is its own very intricate song and dance. And so when you think about that, to be on the hunt, to be in pursuit is something that many people can get at some point, but then they lose steam, right? There are a whole lot of brilliant lawyers, right? Brilliant lawyers, great people who cannot run a law firm. And it's not because they're not smart and capable. And it's not even because they don't want it enough. It is because they don't have intuitively in themselves the pick up and go, the get up and get running, right? They need it handed to them a little bit more. And I hate to say that because that sounds very pejorative. It sounds like, well, what do you mean they need it handed to them? Like everyone can be intrinsically motivated. Everyone can find their way if it's something that matters to them. And there's some truth to that, but only some truth. There are some people that no matter how dedicated, motivated, excited they are about a thing, they just don't have the intestinal fortitude to keep going. And that is a very real truth that I don't think we are willing to talk about, because to do so somehow suggests that a person who owns a law firm is better than a person who doesn't. It's not that they're better, right? There are certain things that a law firm owner does not have. And there are certain things that employees do not have, right? We're just different breeds of human. And we need employees as much as we need employers, right? We depend on each other. But putting that aside for a moment, just think about that energetic push to go pursue something with tenacity and dedication. Think about it. You don't get that same dopamine hit of pursuit in a law firm sales role that you might get when you are able to go out and prospect, when you're able to go hunt and kill and bring back to the cave in a traditional sales role. You don't have that here. Because your non-attorney might be involved in your marketing efforts. He or she might be attending trade shows, might be appearing on podcasts, might be talking to people at networking events that you host or that you attend. But that is not the same as being able to directly go up and say, hey, I think you need a such and such, right? Now, a salesperson is probably not going to approach it quite that directly, but pretty close, right? And because of that nuanced difference, that non-solicitation that we have as attorneys, and that your non-attorney salesperson will have to honor being in this profession, they have to have that ability to sustain that drive and pursuit in a way that other people don't have to, right? If your employee, your lawyer, does not have drive and pursuit to serve the client, well, at some point, they might run out of steam with a client, but that's oftentimes where settlements happen. And I hate to say that. It's another dirty little secret of our profession. There are many lawyers that very ethically believe that there's a certain stage of the case where the client becomes ready to settle. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's that the lawyer becomes ready to settle, right? They've lived with a client for so long. They're like, I need this to be over, right? Well, I want you to think about that when you think about I need this to be over with sales, right? And the other thing is that many people, I would say statistically more people than not, have a antagonistic relationship with rejection, because rejection isn't just, I reject your premise, I reject your statement, it's I reject you as a person. In fact, that's part of the reason why so many people will just not return calls or emails when they don't want to be sold to. Rather than say no, because saying no to a person feels bad. You say, they're just not going to accept no for an answer. They will. Right? But it doesn't feel good to tell you no, because I know I don't like being told no, because I feel when somebody tells me no that they're rejecting me, and I don't like that. So I don't want to do that. So I'll just run away instead. That's what a lot of prospects do, right? In that follow-up, the third or fourth or 10th or 12th time, the person gets around to yes, because the person has finally reached in their mind the information and decision making that they need to get to yes. But oftentimes they don't. The follow-up doesn't happen because the person who is tasked with following up feels rejected having not made the sale in the first place. So they lose that steam in that, right? So you want to be looking in an assessment for a person who doesn't have that feel for continuing to go. If you just ask them, what do you do when you get rejected? There's a canned answer for that. The same way that when you ask a lawyer, hey, what are your greatest weaknesses? Oh, I care too much. I work too hard. I love my clients too much. I become enmeshed with them and I just never give up, right? That's the nice way of saying something not so nice about yourself. It's the same thing with sales, right? You're around long enough, you dig around on the internet, you can find the canned response of how to answer just about any interview question. But so that's the reason why you really want to get an assessment in this area as a part of your process of hiring the person. So you can see a little under the hood, like how does the person deal with long-term rejection? Or how does the person deal with being told no? How do they deal with, someone ultimately ghosting them? What does that feel like for them? How are they going to process that? How are they going to keep going? Right? Okay. So today we have covered our first of 4 podcast episodes on non-attorney salespeople. And today we have talked about hiring your non-attorney salesperson. Now next time, we are going to go into the world of compensation. And now I know this is an exciting one for a lot of you because we get questions all the time about how can I compensate my non-attorney? What's the dollar amount? How do I structure it? We're going to talk about all those things in our next episode. But if you want to go deeper into the world of how to hire your non-attorney salesperson, that is one of the things that we are going to be covering at our upcoming retreat where we talk about marketing and sales. So the Law Firm Mentor Marketing and Sales Summit is happening in September. We'd love to see you there. For more information, check us out on our website, lawfirmmentor.net. For now, I am Allison Williams, your host of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, and I will see you on our next episode.